Let's just jump right in. So think back to the last time you were gearing up to ask for something big, like maybe it was a raise at work, asking someone out on a date, or even just asking a buddy for a favor. Before the words even left your mouth, your brain probably played out the entire scene a dozen times, right? And let's be real, in those mental rehearsals, it almost always ends in total disaster. We spend so much of our actual lives absolutely dreading a simple two-letter word, no. We completely exhaust ourselves just trying to dodge it. And because of that fear, the text never gets sent, the question is never asked, and we just keep our hands down. Sure, nothing bad happens, but here's the kicker. Nothing good happens either. In today's Explainer, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating concept that was built specifically to hack this exact kind of avoidance. It's called rejection therapy.
Now, I want you to ask yourself directly, when you hold back like that, what are you afraid of, exactly? Well, that is the exact question a guy named Jason Comely asked himself back in 2009. Comely was living in Ontario, Canada, and he had just gone through this really devastating divorce. His wife had left, and honestly, he just completely withdrew. I mean, he stopped leaving his apartment unless he absolutely had to. He ducked his coworkers, he just totally isolated himself. Then, one Friday night, sitting alone with literally nowhere to go, he finally faced that tough question. And the answer he came up with? He realized he was just terrified of rejection.
But to really grasp why Comely was so paralyzed by this, we've got to look at what's actually happening inside the brain. Neuroscientists Naomi Eisenberger and Matthew Lieberman did some research on this, and what they found is absolutely incredible. It turns out social exclusion activates the exact same brain regions that process physical pain. Think about that for a second. Your mind literally does not fully separate "someone just said no to me" from "I just got physically injured." So when you feel that sharp, awful sting of rejection, it's not just a metaphor. As far as your brain is concerned, you are in actual physical pain.
Knowing this completely changes the way we look at our fear, doesn't it? If rejection actually feels like physical pain, it is super easy to just assume, wow, I'm way too sensitive, there's something wrong with me. But actually, scratch that. This fear of rejection isn't some personal flaw or defect. It is literally an ancient evolutionary alarm system. You see, for most of human history, being cast out of your group meant you lost your food, your shelter, your protection. Basically, being rejected meant you were going to die. That alarm system did a great job keeping our ancient ancestors alive. But today? Well, today it's firing off in a modern world where it just doesn't really fit anymore.
Let's use a quick analogy to really lock this concept in. Imagine a smoke detector in your house. For our ancestors, social rejection was like a raging, out-of-control forest fire. It meant ancient exile and certain death. So yeah, that screaming alarm was absolutely crucial. But today, a stranger saying no when you ask for a discount at a coffee shop is just burnt toast. It's a minor, passing inconvenience. But the crazy thing is, because our brains haven't quite updated their hardware yet, that smoke detector screams just as loudly for the burnt toast as it did for the massive forest fire. We're constantly reacting to modern-day awkwardness with prehistoric, life-or-death panic. Because we're walking around with this outdated alarm, some people end up developing what psychologists call rejection sensitivity. Simply put, it's a much stronger, way more painful reaction to everyday social friction than the situation actually calls for. If your alarm system has been tripped enough times, it gets jumpy. It starts going off early. It's exactly why a totally normal, brief email reply suddenly gets interpreted as burning anger, or why a friend canceling dinner plans because they've got a cold feels like total, crushing abandonment. The alarm is just absolutely deafening even when there's no smoke anywhere.
So the really important thing to understand here is how this sensitivity actually changes our day-to-day behavior. It creates this thing we can call the avoidance glitch. When people fear rejection that much, they start building up patterns just to protect themselves. You know the drill. Rehearsing a conversation in the mirror to death, reading way too much into someone's slightly flat tone of voice, or becoming a chronic people pleaser, where you agree to things you absolutely hate just to avoid rocking the boat. And ultimately, you just skip the ask entirely. But here's the tragedy of that glitch. Skipping the ask means you're skipping the opportunity. It leads straight to isolation, which ironically just proves your brain's original fear, that you're all alone. It's a total vicious cycle.
So how in the world do we fix this glitch? Well, let's go back to Jason Comely, sitting alone in his apartment in 2009. Instead of booking a therapist, he took his absolute rock bottom and turned it into a game. His one rule? He had to go out into the real world and get rejected on purpose, at least once a single day. He'd ask to cut in line at the store, he'd ask random strangers for rides, and guess what? He noticed that he survived every single time.
Fast forward a few years, and an entrepreneur named Jia Jiang hit his own rough patch, stumbled upon Calmly's game, and completely supersized it into a viral 100-day public challenge. By 2016, Calmly actually handed the reins of the whole movement over to Jiang, and rejection therapy officially became this massive, global phenomenon for anyone feeling trapped in that avoidance glitch.
Now, just to be super clear here, rejection therapy isn't some formal clinical treatment cooked up in a psychiatry lab, but it does borrow its core mechanics from a highly proven psychological concept, exposure therapy. And the logic here is honestly brilliant. Whether you are absolutely terrified of spiders or you're terrified of hearing the word no, the treatment is essentially the same. You face the thing you're scared of in small, repeated, manageable doses. You just do it over and over again until your nervous system finally clicks and says, oh wait, this is just burnt toast. I'm not actually dying. It recalibrates your internal alarm so it stops treating a minor social hiccup like a life-threatening emergency.
The absolute genius of this game all comes down to a really simple mindset shift. Think about your normal mindset versus the rejection therapy mindset. Normally, your goal is to get a yes, and because of that, you fear the word no, which leads you right back to avoidance. But rejection therapy completely flips the script. Your whole goal is explicitly to get rejected. You are actively trying to get a no. What this means is that if a stranger actually says yes to whatever weird thing you ask them, well, that's just a funny bonus. But if they say no, you literally win the game. This reframe is a total game changer because it takes the sting out immediately. You simply cannot fail at the thing you are actively trying to do.
Okay, so how do you actually put this into practice? You basically climb an escalating ladder of exposure. Step 1 might literally just be sitting near a stranger on a park bench and saying hi. The only goal there is just being next to the unknown. Simple. Step 2. Maybe you invite a stranger who's sitting by themselves to grab a coffee or have a chat. Now, they're almost definitely going to say no and look at you like you've grown a third eyeball, but hey, that's the whole point. You watch yourself survive it. Then you move up to step 3, which might be asking for a ride or walking into a retail store and asking for a discount on a fixed price item. Starting with really small asks like asking a stranger to take your picture or asking a barista to invent an off-menu drink are incredible, low-stakes ways to get your feet wet.
But if you really want to rewire your brain, there are a few golden rules you've got to follow. First off, stick to strangers. A stranger's no costs you absolutely nothing, and realistically, you are never going to see them again anyway. Second, keep the ask small, so the rejection doesn't actually feel like a real personal loss. Third, you have to rely on repetition. Getting rejected once doesn't prove anything to your stubborn nervous system, but doing it 30 times, that will change your life. But honestly, the most important rule of all is to pay attention to your own body. Notice your heart racing. Feel that hot flush of embarrassment in your cheeks, and then just watch as all of it fades away a few minutes later without the world ending. That physical realization, just watching the panic naturally dissolve, is exactly how you reprogram that primitive smoke detector.
Now, it is really important we talk about the safety limits here. Rejection therapy is a fantastic, powerful tool for everyday ordinary avoidance, but it is not a replacement for professional help. If your fear of rejection is rooted in deep trauma, or if you've been diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, DIY exposure like this can actually do more harm than good. Pushing yourself too hard and too fast can just overwhelm your nervous system instead of building it up. In those situations, working with a trained therapist who can safely pace the exposure for you is absolutely the better, safer way to go.
But for the vast majority of us, this is just an incredibly powerful way to hack our own brains. It gives us firsthand, undeniable proof that the word no does not actually cost what our fear tells us it will. People who play this game don't suddenly become weirdos who love being rejected. They just stop letting it rule their lives. So as we wrap up this explainer, I'm going to leave you with one thought to chew on. What would you ask for today, right now, if you knew with absolute certainty that the word no couldn't hurt you? Get out there, test out your alarm system, and maybe, just maybe, try to get rejected today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.